Okay.
Ready?
Yep, ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everybody here. We are starting this informative meeting tonight about solar coming into the south side of Cardington. In this informative meeting, we will find out how many we have that oppose it and anybody here that is for it. This is for information only, and we're glad everybody attended this evening. And at the end of this, we'll have some open discussion on 4 questions. If we can't answer them, we have 2 people here tonight from Open Roads that may be able to answer that question for you. So at this time, I'll turn over to Vicki. We'll let her get started. There again, this is the concerned citizens of Morrow County for solar. So thank you for attending. Sit down. Hope you enjoyed the presentations.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Mac. Welcome. Thanks for coming. How it's going to be. I don't know. I'm going to turn it off.
Turn it off.
It's off. Okay. I'm going to give a presentation for about half hour, 40 minutes, because I'm looking at the web page. There's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties, and a lot of misinformation that's out there. So this way, we'll all get on the same page in terms of what the information is. Then we'll have time. Then we're going to have an 8-minute video, and then we're going to have time for questions. And then at the end, yes.
I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself and where you're from and who you're
Oh,
with?
I'm sorry. I'm Vicki Kerman. We moved from a suburb of Columbus about 16 years ago. Our kids were 12 and 10 at that time, and it was during the financial crisis. And I thought, ooh, I do not like being, was 12 and Nod was 10. And it was the best decision we ever made. We had rabbits, we had layers, we had broilers, we had pygmy goats. The projects that FFA, it was absolutely the best thing. And I could live, most of us could live anywhere in the world that we wanted to, if we really wanted to. And I'm choosing to stay here. I would hate to see the community change with things coming in. So that's me. Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Hey, Vicki,
Yeah.
back here said they can't hear you. I don't know if you're able to get the.
Okay.
Like that a little bit.
Does that work? Why is it doing that?
I don't know.
Okay, well,
I think it's in the way.
what if I talk louder? Does that work? Does that work? Let me talk louder. Okay, let me talk louder then. Ugh. Okay. Here we go.
Come this way.
Well, I can't because we're live streaming it. I've got to be back here, or else the camera
We
can't.
really want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, I'll talk louder. Okay, we're going to cover a couple of things tonight. First, we're going to go through solar basics, how solar works. Next, the type of solar projects. Third, the projects in Warren County. Fourth are the developer commitments. What do the developers commit to when they apply or sign up for a job? Then we're going to watch a video of an installation in Michigan. And then we're going to look at whether or not all of this is too good to be true. And then we're going to look at other risk factors. And then we'll have questions. And then after questions, we will have next steps. Craig and Dan are here from Open Road. Dan's the guy in the ball cap, and Craig is the guy with the beard sitting next to him. And they're responsible for implementing this project here. Okay, solar basics. Why solar? Well, for years and years and years, we've been hearing about climate change to the point where maybe we're a little bit tired of it. The prior administration had their Green New Deal, where there was a huge push for wind and solar and anything that was quote unquote renewable and green. And then, you fixed it?
Working on it.
Okay, and then because of that, through the Rural Energy something program, tons of subsidies were given to wind and solar projects. How a solar system works is you have obviously rays coming in from the sun, being captured, and they go through something called an inverter, which turns it from direct current to alternating current. And then it's fed into, if this is a residential, if you want to be self-sufficient, you put in a battery bank so that it can collect it if you're not using it. And then it would go, and if you're not, if you're on the transmission system, it would come into your house, and then anything left over that you're not using would be uploaded to the transmission system. Some numbers to remember. The big one is 7 acres per megawatt. 1 megawatt powers about 250 homes. Currently in Central Ohio, we use about 4,000 megawatts. The reason everybody is jumping up and down because we need new renewable energy in general is because of all the data centers that are planning to be going in. Amazon, Meta, who else? Apple, everybody are setting up data centers. And if you read through the paper, you'll see that they're investing billions of dollars in these things. They suck energy like crazy. Each one requires about 30 to 100 megawatts. And with artificial intelligence, an artificial intelligence search takes up 5 to 10 times the amount of electricity that a regular Google search does. So those numbers of 30 to 100 megawatts each is very conservative. Data energy requirements are expected to grow by 5,000 megawatts by the year 2030. And remember, 7 acres per megawatt. What types of solar projects are there? They're broken into 3 groups. One is residential or commercial. The second is what's called community, and that's what's going on up in Mount Gilead behind the high school. And the third one is industrial or utility scale. People use the terms interchangeably. For residential and commercial, typically residents will use 0.004 megawatts, which is about, and remember 7 acres per megawatt, that's about 1,200 square feet, which is about right. If you've got a house with a footprint that's about 1,200 square feet, that would be about right for the solar panels. Those get about a 30% investment tax credit, which means the company can take the funds or the subsidies directly off their taxes that are owed to the government. The approval is through the local zoning board. Same arrangement for commercial, but they require a little bit more energy. They require 0.15 megawatts, which is at 5 acres. Again, they get the 30% investment tax credit, and again, the approval is by the local zoning board. On the other end of the scale are the industrial or utility scale programs, where the electricity is uploaded to the transmission grid directly and then distributed wherever it is needed on the system. In the residential and the commercial, that's all used by you, that's it. In the industrial and also in the community, what they do is they put these farms out there and upload all of the energy into the transmission system. There are 2 types of, the Power Siting Board approves those projects that are over 50 megawatts. Anything under 50 megawatts does not require siting board approval. 50 megawatts is 350 acres, which is a lot. And again, those get a 30% investment tax credit. In between those two there are 2 levels of community projects. The first one is those projects between 5 and 50 megawatts, which take between 3 and 350 acres, again with a 30% investment tax credit. The developer leases land from the landowner, sells the credits to paying subscribers, and the typical lease period is 25 to 40 years. Here's an example of 126 acres, which would fall in that arena. The second one are those that are less than 5 megawatts or 35 acres. In this case, the developer leases the land from the landowner, and I screwed up on the slides. The other one should have been different. Sells the credits to paying subscribers with a typical lease period of 25 to 40 years. They get up to a 60% investment tax credit, because for those that are under 5 megawatts, you get an additional 10% for being in a low to middle income environment. And if you designate that the energy is benefiting low to middle income households, then you get an extra 20%. So if you're a developer or an owner, you can get up to 60% of your investment back in terms of investment tax credits. And again, approval is by the local zoning board. So basically anything under 350 acres is up to the local zoning board to approve or disapprove. Anything above 350 acres must go to the Ohio Power Siting Board. There are 4 projects in Morrow County. The first one is Blossom at 144 megawatts and a little over 1,000 acres. That's up at the intersection of 61 and 309. I don't know if you're all familiar with that. The second one is Woodbury at 150 megawatts out in Perry Township with about 1,000 acres. Crossroads is the one I think most of us are here for. Crossroads, which is south of Cardington. That is roughly 100 megawatts and roughly 700 acres. Although from what I understand, the final diagram hasn't been approved or hasn't been comprised yet. The fourth one is Mount Gilead Community. It's behind the high school. It should be 4.5 megawatts. Mistake on the slide. 4.5 megawatts, and it takes up 42 acres. Those are the ones in Morrow County. Typical equipment for a 150 megawatt project is almost 400,000 solar panels, 60,000 galvanized pilings that are pounded 6 to 12 feet into the ground, 13 miles of electrical connection lines buried 3 feet underground in 2 to 3 foot wide trenches, 7.5 miles of access roads, 48 battery energy storage containers. And these aren't just little batteries. These are semi-container, shipping container size things. 48 inverters. Those are the things that take the DC and make it alternating current. Couple of other power conversion systems, a meteorological station, et cetera, et cetera. That's what a typical 150 megawatt project takes. Blossom Solar, again, 144 megawatts up in Washington Township. It was approved by the siting board back in May of 2023, and it was sold by Open Road to Sol Systems the next month. And the developer was indeed Open Road. The construction is supposed to start in the spring, which means in a couple of months. Woodbury Solar, that was out in Perry Township, about 1,000 acres. They were not what's called grandfathered into something called SB 52, which means if you had gotten your application in before October 11th of 2021, that indeed you could be grandfathered, and the county commissioners or the townships would have basically no say in terms of whether or not it could proceed. The developer is Total Energies. However, even though the county commissioners have approved it or have denied it, in theory, it could be divided into 350-foot sections as community solar, and indeed the siting board would not have jurisdiction over it, but the local siting board, the local zoning board would. So that's kind of a way they could get around it. Crosswoods, the one south of Cardington, again, about 900 megawatts, 700 acres, takes 4 townships. Open Road, from what I understand, is expected to apply to the siting board in April of this year. And it is grandfathered in SB 52, which means the county commissioners cannot just deny it, or the township trustees cannot just deny it. The approval authority is with PJM, which is the transmission grid operator and the power siting board. And again, local county and township officials, they cannot deny the project. Now, Gilead Community Solar, it's 4.5 megawatts, 42 acres, up in Gilead Township. And they went for a conditional use permit last week, and they decided, apparently the company who's developing it decided to table it until March so they can come up with a revised site plan based on public input. And the developer is a company called ESA, and they're out of Florida. Developer commitments. Applications and marketing materials commit to that the project will have little or no impact on the environment, on the farmland, on nearby properties, and on the Morrow County community. And those commitments fall in basically 4 different areas. The first is decommissioning, where after the project life is over, they will come in and return the soil back to the way it was before all the equipment went in. The second one's in construction. During the construction time, noise limits, truck limits, road conditions, drainage, etc., a whole bunch of things under operation. And then under operation, again, noise, interference from EMF, a whole bunch of things on that. And the final is accountability. How are they accountable for these things, given that they're going to be lasting 40 years? We're going to focus just on decommissioning, because we could be here all night if we went through each of the individual commitments that they have made for all the other items.
So in decommissioning, they legally commit to restoring the agricultural lands to the conditions prior to the disturbance, to establish a bond for the decommissioning effort when the project owner determines that the facility should be retired, when the emphasis is on when the project owner determines that the facility should be retired, which could be in a year, it could be in 5 years, it could be in 25 or 40 years. It's up to the project owner. Their estimates include the removal of equipment and infrastructure, but do not typically include estimates for removal of hazardous waste, as they are claiming that none are anticipated. During construction, they commit to minimal wear and tear on the roads, topsoil being removed and stored on the property, then replaced upon decommissioning. The noise will be acceptable under a federal highway construction handbook regulation. There will be no drainage issues, and if there are, then they will be remedied. There will be no groundwater or well issues due to the pounding of the pilings 6 to 12 feet into the ground, and that 80% of the construction jobs that are created will go to Ohio residents. That's what they legally commit in their application. Operation. They have legally committed that noise generated will be indiscernible because solar panels don't make any noise. Glare will be less than soil or wood shingles. The heat generated, it's known as the heat island effect. You get it in major cities, will not resemble that of urban environments. EMF, which is electromagnetic frequency, it's also known as dirty electricity, will not affect either cell phone reception or people's health. The solar panels don't contribute any harmful materials. Fencing will obscure any view of the site and will be wildlife friendly. Fire safety will not be an issue, and the jobs will be created for the life of the project. With accountability, they commit to responding to customer complaints in a timely manner, to resolving them if possible, and to providing quarterly reports to the Ohio Power Siting Board. I don't know what the process for resolving complaints in community projects is. So, do the developers meet those commitments? And we've got, see? He didn't think I'd be able to get it working.
Okay, when they go back in there for maintenance, they get stuck because it was not tiled, it was wet, so they got stuck. So they brought in this company that injected cement into the ground, powdered cement. Yeah, tons of it. Powdered cement into the ground to make it solid.
So how is that supposed to be the same farm ground after?
Well, it's not going to be ever the same farm ground.
I was told that they destroy all the tile, therefore you have water standing everywhere. there's a tile under the ground, in Iowa, trees are a nuisance because the roots grow in the tile and plug it.
I mean, come out in this beautiful area and a profit motive and make everybody miserable. It doesn't seem right, does it?
No, it doesn't. No.
This is the thing that makes all the noise.
Yeah, go ahead, roll that way.
This one.
Oh, nice.
Well, that,
That's beautiful.
and it has been a lot louder than that.
Now, if that was my house and I had my windows open,
Oh, you sitting out there in the evening,
Yeah.
you'd be listening to that.
that's a soothing sound.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just every man wants to listen
Yeah.
to that shit.
yeah. I cannot imagine living with that constantly in the background. Man, we're about half an hour away. You can hear those inverter fans running. Well, okay, so let's talk about jobs, because they sure are proud that there's gonna be 200 jobs during construction, all local hire.
Not local.
Okay,
There wasn't any local hire around here.
okay.
You look at the license plates in the parking lot, they were not in Michigan.
Well, that's what I thought, man, they're gonna train all those people and to put them in and then what, fire them, you know, so,
They're lying.
yeah. What about, afterwards? Is there just a bunch
They
of,
have a skeleton crew that roams around here,
okay,
probably 4 or 5 people.
okay. Well, it's not. Next thing my argument is so me as a farmer, I spend all that money in the community.
Yes, you
I buy all the inputs.
Yeah.
I support all the local businesses.
Yes, you do.
Do you think that the owners that are taking the money in for the solar panels are doing that?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. I mean, what are they?
We're taking it out of here.
I got 2 kids. I got a daughter who's 10 and a son who's 8. And I want them to farm someday, and I want there to be an opportunity for them. And how is there supposed to be if we take all this land out of production around my house? And yeah. An advocate against it. I don't want it around. I think it's terrible. I mean,
If
this
you
is,
can stop it, you should do it.
you know,
Because it's an abomination. It's just disgusting.
would anybody admit they screwed up signing up for this stuff?
A lot of Chinese people don't like to admit they made a mistake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. It's hard to swallow your pride.
Yes, it.
Okay, is that, first of all, I need to say that was not Open Road who was the developer for that. That was Ranger Powers. I need to say, I just need to make that comment up front. But that's not an isolated case. The Power Siting Board has a database on the website with all of the projects that they have seen within the last, 6, 7 years. There have been 75 projects that have come across their desk, 65 of which have been approved. They have all of the case documents. It's almost like it's an adjudicatory proceedings. They have all the case documents, and then they have all the public comments. And if you go through the public comments, which I've done for all the projects that have either been under construction or in operation, everybody on the Power Siting Board should read those, because these people have come out with groundwater issues, drainage issues, you name it. It's all in there. Second thing is there are a lot of articles and online videos online, just like the one you just saw, which talk about the specific experiences that people have had with this. There's one facility in, I think it is Virginia, where the developer was fined $135 million because of the drainage issues that they caused on a neighboring property. Research literature on agronomy and soil engineering. There's a lot about chemicals that harm the soil. I've learned a lot. There's layers, there are horizons in the soil. You've got the topsoil, and then you have the next 3 feet, and then you have the bedrock. I've learned a lot about soil. But if you look at the literature on that, those are not an isolated case. Let's just talk about decommissioning. Again, they have promised to restore the agricultural lands to the conditions prior to use, and they established a bond. Do they have any data or evidence that this can be done? If you're going to make that kind of a commitment, a 40-year commitment, and we're all going to be dead by then, do they have any data or evidence for that? The answer is they have none. They have absolutely no data whatsoever. No solar projects on farmland have been decommissioned, so there are no data. Even Open Road's own expert witness testified to this at one of the Ohio Power Siting Board testimonies for the Fraser project in Knox County. He admitted that there have been none that have been decommissioned. There have been no database research studies which have been carried out to evaluate whether the land can be returned to its prior condition. Just in 2023, 2 years ago, Virginia Tech started a 6-year study looking at the soil and water impacts of solar, recognizing that real-world conditions do not match the models that they are using. Expert agronomists and soil engineers have testified that the idea of returning the land to its original condition is highly speculative, and that it will never again be prime farmland. Finally, in May of last year, Illinois Rep. Miller introduced a bill to Congress to direct the Secretary of Agriculture to conduct a study on the effects of solar panels on farmland. When they say it takes an act of Congress to get something done, this would be the perfect example of why do we have to direct them to do that. The developers know this. How can the developers be legally committing to doing something for which they have no evidence that it can be done? That's a legal commitment. The Siting Board knows this. How can the Siting Board be accepting and approving applications where there are no data that the commitments can actually be satisfied? This is just one area of concern. Similar concerns for every other commitment during construction and operation. I'm not going to go through them all. I've got a position paper that goes through it all. It's already been uploaded to the Facebook page. If you want to download it or read it, it's long. It's enough. But there are other risk factors too. The first is early retirement and decommissioning. Currently, the projects are scheduled for 25 to 40 years, but what could cause it to happen a lot sooner than that? The first would be a shift in federal energy policy with the termination of subsidies. And I got got a text today from a friend whose brother-in-law saw something going across the CNBC news screen about Trump saying that he was going to be terminating subsidies for solar and wind. The data centers have finally realized that solar and wind will not meet their energy consumption requirements. Again, if you go back, they take at least 30 to 100 megawatts. just for one data center. And they are turning to something called SMRs, which are small modular nuclear reactors. I have another good friend whose son works for one of the nuclear or EPRI or something like that. And he was saying that's where everything is going. He says that is absolutely the thing that makes most sense, having small nuclear reactors. You can also have supply chain disruptions or tariffs. 80% of these panels and electrical equipment come from either China or East Asia, India. What happens if we can't get a hold of them? What's the time going to be? You know, say an inverter goes bad, how long will it take to get one from overseas? So how long would it be out of commission? Okay, that's it for, I know it was kind of quick and a lot of information in there. Does anybody have any questions either for me or for Dan or for Craig who are here? Any questions? No well, yes, a question. Thank you.
Hey, so for, sorry, you just said your guys' name.
Craig and Dan.
Got a question for you. How are you knowing, like, I know that there's a main that runs through one of those areas, file main. There's at least 100 acres on it. There's probably more than the neighbor's doing. How are you guys making sure you don't crush that, or how are you dealing with that? You have a guy out there with a probe probing it every 2 feet?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And first I want to say, Vicki, thank you so much for inviting us. I know there's way too much information for us here to go through each thing point by point. I'm really glad to see all this interest, and if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Craig Adair with Open Road Renewables. This is Dan Check. We just opened an office here in Cardington. We're at the beginning of a long process, a very rigorous process, that if this project were to be approved, will involve lots of opportunities just like this, for public input and question answering. Drain tile is certainly one great question, and there will be, as part of our permit application, a drain tile assessment that includes a map. So we have gathered information from the landowners, from the soil water district, and from satellite imagery to identify as much drain tile as we can. We will absolutely identify the locations of every main tile, and we will not touch a main tile. So that's one of the many points. There's a lot of information here that is just not accurate or is missing some very important information, such as drain tile is a huge one. And I don't know if in Michigan, where they were showing pictures and scenes, whether they have the kind of binding permit, essentially contract provisions in the permit that say, for example, we cannot cause a drainage problem on a neighbor's property, or otherwise we would be in violation of the permit. To answer your question, so there's a long process of first identifying via maps and satellite and meetings with landowners, and then second, identifying certainly mains, probes, as needed to make sure we are not touching any drain tile mains. Laterals is different. Laterals, well, historically the way you do lateral, avoid as much of it as you can, but then you will hit some because of all the piles, and any one that could affect drainage onto a neighboring property would be repaired or replaced. Where actually the industry has learned, and OPSB, the regulators have learned, and now we're actually going to be doing something different on this project, which is to, in most of the project area, decommission a new system around the solar project, because it's difficult and expensive to go around and repair, lateral.
And it's an old clay, and it's, that
Yeah.
you're gonna crush it anyhow.
It's a great question, and I don't know how much time we'll have. We could really go through every single one of these topics and be happy to answer questions and provide additional information. We're going to have our first of 2 public information meetings on March 11th. We now have a website where there's a bunch of information. Dan, we have a bunch of information here in our office, which is literally just about 50 yards over. And so I really appreciate the question, and there's lots of more information I'd be happy to provide. One of the other things I would like to point out, that Vicki, I think you make a bunch of good points about developer commitments. I would not take my word for anything, okay? I would look at what the permit conditions say, because those are the binding contractual provisions that OPSB oversees. So if, for example, we have an inverter that is causing a noise problem for a neighbor, there's a permit condition. It says if the noise level at a neighboring house is more than 5 decibels over ambient levels, well, we are in violation of our permit, and we are legally required to retrofit that to bring it back into compliance. I don't know if that's the case in Michigan, but, so there's a lot of things, noise is a perfectly valid concern, but there's a solution to it, and we can walk through each of those things. So, does that answer your question?
You can say how long it would take to get somebody out to fix that noise.
Yeah, and I think that depends on the urgency of what it is. For example, if it's a problem with damage to a road that was caused by our construction, there will be a provision in the road use agreement with the county, because that's another example of something, of course, if I were a neighbor, I would be very concerned about damage to the roads. Well, we will enter into a binding contract with the county that says we have to repair any damage to the roads. And there will be a bond set aside so that if we don't do that, the county or the township can do it. But, so for example, there's two different categories there. If it's something that could cause a road hazard, well, they will have to be repaired within 24 or 48 hours. If it's something that, is a nuisance, well, then that may take a little bit more time. But so it depends on what the issue is.
So
Well,
if
there's
you
a little
guys
bit more
actually
time.
completed a project and stuck with it, like, cause they just showed ones that you sold off. Like you got people to agree to it, and then you sold it to other companies. So have you actually like stuck with a project and actually seen it all the way through your company? Or do you just get people to agree to it and then sell it off to another?
Well, so on our business model, we are a developer. So we do not operate solar projects. That's not our business model.
You just sell it off?
Well, exactly, our project.
I mean, I just want everybody to realize.
No, and that's fine, and that's true, but what I would like you and others to realize is that that's not something to be afraid of. That's the reason why there are binding leases with the landlord.
Well, who was so great? You said.
No, that's, a developer model is different than an owner-operator model.
I mean, I've heard office people before. Go ahead, I mean.
Okay, well, but what is important for people to know is that those contracts are binding on whoever owns the project. The permit conditions are binding on whoever owns the project. It doesn't matter whether it's us or a future owner.
Sure, but nothing keeps them from selling it, and so on and so on and so
That
on.
is true.
And then in 40 years, you're stuck with this mess. And that's why nobody's worried about in 40 years when we have to tear it out.
Because everybody but Heather's gonna be dead.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Good point.
Well, but I think the key is that. So I think the important point is that the provisions of the contract are binding. It does not matter whether the ownership changes.
Who enforces the decommissioning? Who's the one that oversees that and makes sure it happens?
That's the Ohio Power Siting Board. So they're the ones that require that we have to file a plan that says, here's how decommissioning will work. Here's the estimate for the cost to remove all of the equipment. That's everything from the surface, that's everything under the ground. The only things that can stay are any cables that are buried deeper than 3 feet deep, because you actually damage the soil more by removing those. Otherwise, everything else has to come up, and there's a bond that is sitting that has to be posted to cover the entire cost of removing the equipment and restoring the land. And OBSB will not allow us to start construction until that bond is in place. So OBSB is the one that enforces all the permit conditions, and they have a compliance division. And I think you make a good point. There have been some cases where permit conditions have been violated, and OBSB went out. You mentioned it, not in your slide, but in your paper. There's a project down in Highland to certain setbacks from roads, and then when they built the project, they didn't use those setbacks. They put the panels closer to the roads. OBSB went out, and now the developer or the owner is paying millions of dollars to remove those and come into compliance. So to answer your question, it's OBSB who does the regulation and the oversight.
Okay, who sees all this energy? Who's getting all this energy? Because we're not going to get it locally, so who's going to see it?
Good question. So the way the electricity markets work, and Vicky's paper does a good job, I think, of explaining this, that in the way electricity works is the power would go, if this project is approved and built, onto the transmission line that runs there across 25. The power, once it goes onto the transmission system, it flows like water. So houses around here, businesses will get electrons that were generated by those solar panels. But there's not a direct relationship between that and, say, the electric bill that you get, because that's at the retail level. This power is being produced and sold at the wholesale level. So there will be an end user, and it could be a manufacturing plant, it could be a utility, it could be a data center that contracts with us
Okay,
to.
I heard her say Amazon and Meta feeding AI. So we're gonna start feeding AI and not people?
Well, no, so
Oh, yeah.
the power will go to wherever power is consumed. So some of that power will end up right here in this building. Some of it will end up in the homes. Some of it will end up at, all the various users in the area. It's just that the way the grid works, in order to ensure the stability of the transmission lines, for every electron that goes onto the system, there has to be somebody taking the same number of electrons off. So there has to be a contract that matches demand with supply for the physical stability of the lines.
So would that make your electricity go up since they're helping paying you guys to do it?
No, there will not be, you won't see any changes in electricity bills as a result of any single project. What we've seen in other markets where there have been a lot of renewable built, for example, I live in Texas. In Texas, we have a ton of wind energy now. And in areas where there has been a lot of renewables that have come onto the system, there's been lowering of power prices simply because renewables now are the cheapest source of new power, wind and solar. So, but there's not a direct relationship between any one project and anybody's bill. That's only what happen over time if more and more of the cheaper types of energy is put on the system. Yes, sir.
I don't really have any questions for these guys because they advocate for the power company and they're going to tell you all great things about solar, which, is what it is. I have a question first for you guys.
Okay,
And I thought it was kind of interesting that your first meeting is on March 11th, that's when the zoning board meeting for the Mount Gilead project is stated with.
Yeah.
So they can pull some people away from that project or that meeting. And two, would you be willing to bring this to that meeting?
oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because we can introduce testimony and this type of thing into the zoning meeting.
I'd need to check with the zoning board or the county commissioners because testimony is only supposed to be 3 minutes long.
Well, whatever we can get in.
Okay, no, it'd be more
And
than.
at the last meeting, they gave us a lot more than 3 minutes because they're gonna give the solar people a ton of time.
Okay,
To present their new plan.
okay.
So they really didn't have any limit on people.
Well, if someone from are you from that?
I'm from the Mount Gilead project.
Okay,
Of course, I've been trying to help with the Perry Township.
if you would want to do me a
And-
favor and check with
I
them to
certainly,
make
I'll go see the
sure,
zoning inspector tomorrow.
because I can tailor it for however many minutes.
Sure, I will do that.
No, would be happy to.
So the second question I have, is there anybody from the Morrow County Commissioners here?
That was my question.
No. How about township
Now that-
trustees?
Township.
How about township trustees?
Well, no,
Oh, we've got one.
Is there
Thank
any
you.
township people here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, good.
great, beautiful.
Good.
But we don't see any Morrow County Commissioners.
And you.
Is there also anybody here representing the Morrow County Republican Party?
All of it. Yeah, that's right.
When I say that, run their website, the Morrow County Republican website. Hi, Ken. You know me, big mouth, right? To tell you a little bit about myself anyway, so you know I'm just not some outsider. I was born and raised in Mount Gilead, Ohio. I was born at Morrow County Hospital. I was a paramedic in Morrow County, the very first one in Morrow County. And I ran EMS in Cardington. I ran EMS in Mount Gilead and in Iberia, my various places I've lived. So I've been a county resident, love the county, I want to keep the county. So the commissioners and the Morrow County Republicans on their website, every day they post what wonderful things Trump's doing. And whether you agree with Trump or not, the Republican Party does. Shouldn't they be posting something about this? If Trump's so great and he wants to get rid of solar, shouldn't the Republican Party be involved with this? They're not.
So the commissioners don't have a say in it anyway.
Here's my,
But if it goes down to 350, boom, they're out.
but here's my point about that.
Yeah.
The Morrow County Commissioners, they all know their state representatives for
Right.
the area,
Right.
Rorden, McLean, and they know these guys. They have their numbers. They could elicit their help. Those guys know all the national party people, correct? They could be eliciting those help, which goes up to our great Vice President J.D. Vance, that could be brought in to help.
He is great.
But nobody from our county, Republican Party county commissioners are trying to push it up that level.
Why do you think
So-
we're in Morrow County? We don't have money to protect ourselves. There's no benefit for Morrow County. None.
Well,
That's one of the reasons.
one of the comments that they made at the last zoning meeting, or I guess the first zoning meeting when we got this table, was that from, can you tell me his name on the left side? Anyway, I can find that out. Is basically his one thing is Morrow County is a poor county. That was one of his last statements, Morrow County is a poor county. It may not have as much money as Delaware County, but I think we're richer than Delaware County in a lot of reasons.
I agree.
And one of the things that stops that is all the industry that's going on down there. Leave it down there. A friend of mine drives for the Amish. One last thing. He drove some Amish friends to build a barn in Delaware County today. The homeowner came out, talked to him. He said, "Where are you from, John?" John said, "Well, I'm from Crawford County." He said, "Oh, I thought the Amish were from Morrow County." He said, "Well, they are. I just live pretty close to them and I drive them down here." He said, "Well, you guys know anything about that solar that we're getting that's gonna fund Delaware County?" So Delaware County believes that we're doing it for them. So, but you need to call the commissioners every day. You need to call the zoning boards every single day. You need to make sure these people know that they gotta move it up the line, because if we're not talking to them, you know, right now, I'm just the big asshole of the county, so.
Let me explain something to you about the way this has happened. Number one, county commissioners were never informed of this project until, I forget what it was now, a couple months ago. So what I have done research on and seen is these guys are sliding this in the back door until they get approved by OPSB, because once they're approved by OPSB, our zoning regulations go out the window.
Yeah, and if that's the case, we need new county commissioners, because they should be on top of
We
it.
need new senators to, if we're gonna have
Absolutely.
zoning,
Anyhow,
we should be able to enforce our zoning,
But-
okay?
you know, they have the ability, like I said, to move this up the chain.
Right,
Vivek Ramaswamy is gonna be running for governor. They have the ability to move it up to him. John
No.
Houston's gonna be running
No-
for governor.
no
He was
debate
just
there.
down here.
right. But my point being is, when they come in and they start the study with PJM, which is maintaining the power, the high tension power lines is up above, high up above. Once that's approved, once they have a meeting, they did not announce any meetings until, this is what, 19th of
No,
March?
absolutely. But
Okay.
I will not accept the ignorance of the commissioners as an
Oh,
excuse.
I agree with you on that. But the point being is, they get this underneath of OPSB, and it takes all the regulations out of the local hands.
And that's why we need
and
to
puts
step
it
it up
back-
higher and
right.
higher and higher.
Well,
And
this
they have the
needs-
ability to do that.
This needs to go somewhere besides the board that's handpicked, and I'm gonna say it, needs to be handpicked by somebody different than Mike DeWine.
No question there. You didn't hear me mention his name at all.
Well, but I will, I'm not afraid to. So what they get is they get this approved by OPSB, and then they come up and say, we don't care about your zoning, we're gonna put it in anyway. So now it's up to the citizens to attend all the meetings and attend all the OPSB board meetings and voice the opposition.
And watch how they conveniently put multiple meetings on the same day.
Right. So I am not upset point blank about solar. I'm
I'm not
upset
either.
about the way that they're doing it.
I go to Las Vegas 4 or 5 times a year, and solar out there is just the greatest thing. They just finally had a rainstorm, the first clouds they've had in 250 some days. Wonderful place for solar.
My other problem with this project is where this is going in. I don't know anything about County Road 25, what kind of conditions they have for drainage. But where I live at, if they put the solar panels up against my property, and I know they got to stay back so many feet, don't get me wrong.
I'm aware, trust me.
But where I'm at is they just redone the ditch along 165. They widened it and deepened it. Okay? That ditch still floods. When you come in and compact soil, and you come in and bring solar panels in, you're going to have more water runoff than you are, the ground's going to absorb it. So when these ditches that are along our roadways are flooding now, and we bring solar in, it's just gonna continue to have more runoff. They're gonna compact. It's like putting blacktop down. The more blacktop you put down, the more water runoff you have.
Well, my argument into the Mount Gilead project was, when they presented their first plan, there was questions. What are you gonna put under the solar panels?
Right.
Well, we're gonna put native grasses. How are you gonna maintain them native grasses? Well, we may hire somebody to mow that grass. Well, we may, there was kind of some arguments about that. We may run sheep under that grass. Well, what kind of native grasses? Well, we don't know. We'll just pick something out. In their proposal, there is no specifics. Tell me exactly what you're gonna do. Are you gonna mow it? Are you gonna graze it? And stick with it.
And that brings up another point.
Hard to argue when I don't know the parameters.
Right. And that brings up a very good point on another subject. These guys are developing this. They're gonna come in, it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, and they sell it off. Let's say they sell it off to a company that's not in the United States.
No.
Am I right? It's been done.
The Mount Gilead project that is being put in by ESA is already contracted to, I can't tell you the name, a place in New Jersey, who is owned by Canadian Power, who has ties to China. I mean, it's going back overseas. There's gonna be no one accountable by the time it gets to a problem, because it's gonna all be overseas.
And I can tell you that exactly what's gonna take place. And I've got nothing against the developer, against Craig.
No, I just don't need to listen to him because I know he's pro.
They'll come in and they're gonna get this thing sold to OPSB. They're going to turn around, and I'll bet you 10 to 1, the developer of this program is gonna in turn sell it off long before there's a problem.
Absolutely. Well, sure. Change the subject a little bit. Is there any studies of real estate values of neighboring properties, like the houses you saw there next to? What happens to real estate?
Okay,
hold on, I've got an answer for that.
She's got an answer for that, but I'm gonna tell you, the way I see it is, they're gonna tell you, no, it does not devalue your property, but it will change the people that will buy that property because of that solar farm. So if you're not devaluing the property, you're making less people want your property when you go sell it.
I got a text.
There.
Look, can I finish this first? I got a text this morning from a friend. Just wanted to tell you, I talked to a friend, and she's very reputable and very good. Okay, but just to tell you, I talked to a friend who lives in New Washington. They have 2 solar farms. It's the biggest eyesore, and no one wants to live around them. Real estate prices have dropped. One man can't see anything out the back of his house except the solar. He's tried to sell his house, and he cannot. He gets no views.
We need the monetary. We need the monetary. We need to know, statistically wise, how much is my house gonna drop? How much is this gonna drop? It's nice to have a testimony, but show me the facts and figures.
There is lots of data on this, so I'm glad you're asking for the data.
Well, I can tell you OSU has done 0 studies on any solar. I contacted OSU. The guy from OSU told me, he said, we have done no studies on the effects of solar ever, as of yet. It's coming, but that we don't know when. Now, I've talked to realtors. Realtors have said it's definitely going to make your house sell for a lot less money than what it should be selling for now.
You're shaking your head. Do you have any studies that specifically target rural areas instead of solar panels next to neighborhoods? Because I can see that not negatively affecting it, but changing this seems like a bigger deal.
No, and it's a great question, and there are literally millions, there are studies that have looked at millions of transactions of houses next to solar projects compared to ones that are not next to solar projects, and the data is overwhelming. It does not have a negative impact on property values, but don't take my word for it.
Property values of like 5 acres and greater only, not just small, like small neighborhoods. I'm talking like you say millions of homes.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there'd be that many millions of homes that are isolated around, like, that would be very representative of what's gonna go on.
No, there are, and I'll get you the studies and you can look at them.
Okay, I have one more follow-up question while
Sure,
we're
yeah.
talking here. When you talk about no negative long-term effects on the agriculture land, you're gonna plant native grasses. Native grasses are very hardy and they don't require a lot of biological material and a lot of, agronomic things that really help them survive. So you're gonna put instruments above the ground that are designed to absorb the maximum amount of sunlight per square foot. And that sunlight is not gonna go down there to nurture and keep maintaining the biological biome that is in the topsoil. So that topsoil will get ruined. Are there any studies of what happens when you're not clearing the soil, you're not planting new things, it's gonna go dormant compared to what it is now? Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, keep in mind, for these types of newer solar projects, these panels will be sitting on rows running north-south, and the panels will rotate, they track the sun, so sun will get to the grass.
But they're tracking the sun, so it's absorbing the majority of the sun.
Correct, but there's still sun that gets to different parts of the grass at different types of day.
What percentage of sun are you reducing per day?
What's that?
How much sun are you reducing hitting the ground per day?
That's a good question. I don't know that. But there are absolutely studies that have been done. And effectively what you're doing when you take cropland and then convert it to year-round native pasture grass or native ground cover, is you're not adding the chemicals and the fertilizers to the soil. So many soil scientists have looked at it and concluded the soil will actually be healthier at the end of a project when the soil has been left fallow without all the chemical additives of native grasses, especially when you add grazing sheep and the organic matter that they add to the soil. But I'd be happy to get you information on that because it's a very.
Are you absolutely 100% grazing sheep?
What's that?
Are you absolutely 100% grazing sheep?
It will be a commitment in our permit application, and the way OPSB pollinator friendly, meaning native wildflowers now within inside the project area, or you graze sheep. And in this case, we are going to commit to grazing sheep. So yes, we don't know what sheep grazer we will work with, but this site will be grazed by sheep. Yes, sir.
How come nobody's asked?
I'm sorry.
Hold on, the lady speaking.
How come that nobody's asked if any of the farmers that have committed to this are here tonight? Are any of those guys here? Let me tell you one thing, my brother-in-law was one of them here. He knew 6 years ago about this project. So I just want you guys to know this, that it's been on the
So what you're
works.
saying is they kept it under the rug for 6 years?
Yes, they did. They signed papers on their end. So if you guys want to talk to people, you need to talk to the farmers too. And I'm sure they have the names of them.
And I'm happy to respond to that.
Landowners.
I don't see any of
Not
the farmers that are participating in this project here.
Landowners, yeah.
But to the concern about this was being done in the dark, we signed our first lease for this project in 2019.
Yep.
But we didn't get enough land to do this project until last fall. So we had meetings with township trustees, with the county commissioners to let them know that we were hoping to do a project and we were signing leases with some farmers. But it wasn't until last fall that we got enough land lease to actually have a project. And then that's when we came and officially started talking to the elected officials and then sent out the letters to the neighbors back in January.
That's a lot.
When you sent this letters to the neighbors, my question is going to be, you did not include a map, is that correct?
In the
No, they
letter?
did not.
In the letter you sent out
No.
to the
Yeah, that's right.
neighbors, you did not include a map.
No.
And your thing of that is because you wasn't for sure that the map was going to be correct.
No.
But you had
no, no.
already signed leases with these farmers, am I correct?
No.
And had it, or not signed leases, but signed agreements that you were willing to lease their land. But yet when the county commissioners and the township trustees had their meeting, nothing was ever brought up until what? 6 months ago? 5 months ago?
We didn't know what land was gonna be in the project until December of last year.
Okay.
In January is when we sent out the letters to the neighbors, And in each of those letters, we said we would like to meet with you and we would like to go over a map with you to show you where the project would be and get your input on it. So that is the time when we shared a map, because that's when we knew actually what land would be part of the project and what land wouldn't.
Well, then,
Lori, you have a question or comment? Or
Well, Matt, it
Yeah.
seems like with every piece of information we get an attached document that says the estimate. We don't know what the final.
It's right over there.
It's right over here.
identified is. Has that land been identified, and is that map available to us?
It is on our website right now. You can go look at it.
There it is.
What
Yeah,
that
it's right
shows,
there.
and yes, that is.
That's the true map right there?
That is the land that we have leased. That's about 740 acres. The project will not take up 740 acres. What you have in an application is the project will take up no more than 611 acres. So in our permit application, there will be a map that shows the boundaries of the 740 acres. What's within that, the fenced area, the maximum fenced area that could have panels. And then the project will almost certainly get smaller than, get bigger than that. So you can look at either of these maps and there will be no other properties that are part of it. It could only get smaller. This gentleman had a question earlier. Yes.
Ask if anybody in here has seen a solar field.
yes.
Yeah, good question.
What
Raise
do
your
you
hand
think
if you
about
have actually
I
seen
don't
it.
like it.
Good.
What don't you like about it?
It's ugly.
Huh?
It's ugly.
Where'd you see them at?
Actually, today, I drove up, to the north end of Marion to look at the construction of the solar panel field there.
Well, the construction of it, how about going over around
looks like
Indian
a hot
Lake and
mess.
looking at ones that's in, already in?
We were over Bell Fountain area and we saw the solar panels were there. She talked to a realtor about property values there going down.
Well, I think if you haven't, I strongly recommend everybody go and see one. Keep in
Do
mind,
you have a solar panel field in your backyard?
I have them on my roof.
But do you have
Different, big,
I mean, I live on 10 acres.
Lori,
My favorite one more thing I want to say.
Hold on.
One more thing I want to say. It's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful.
Hold on a minute. Too many talking.
Matt, you wanna,
Too many talking. Let's get one at a time here.
One more thing I want to say. 6 months ago or whenever, I saw surveyors out surveying. I called the county commissioner, the township commissioner, trustees. They did not know what was going on at all. Okay? Been kept in the dark. They called the farmer. 2 hours later, they called us back and said what was going on. I knew way before this, didn't know my brother-in-law was involved, but the township trustees were in the dark also.
Hey, is he still welcome to Thanksgiving?
gentlemen in the back, or, yes, you.
You say you got data showing that it doesn't hurt property values.
yes.
I would like to know where to see that data, because there's no way you're gonna convince me. If a property's worth $300,000 and you put a solar panel in the front yard or the backyard, that property value is still the same. No way.
And I fully appreciate, if you do not like solar panels, well then, I can see that you do not like the next one. But what the literally millions of transactions in the studies show is that the kinds of things that lower neighboring property values are emissions, are lights, are noise, are odors, things that do not happen at a solar project, especially when there are the kinds of setbacks and screening. So, I mean, we have a bunch of studies on our website. Go to crossroads.solar.
You talked to a realtor and said that property values diminished tremendously.
Every one of these studies interviews dozens of realtors to get as much data as they can, and then they draw conclusions based on all of the data, not on one person. And I think it's important that studies. be
Gentleman in the
done.
front, you have a question?
Since this isn't fully approved yet, do any of the farmers that have leased their land, do they still have the legal ability to get out of the contract that's proposed?
There are certain conditions under the lease where they can terminate the lease. They can't just decide, no, I no longer want to be a part of it. But if certain things happen,
Like what?
if we don't pay them, for example, well,
Are you
then
paying them
they
now?
can
Are you
terminate
paying
the
them
lease.
now?
Yes,
And you have them for 6 years, correct?
yes. Well, I mean, it was only one lease that was signed 6 years ago.
I
Some of the
know, it's my
leases
brother-in-law.
were signed last fall. As soon as somebody signs a lease, they are compensated for it.
Right here.
Good neighbor agreements. What kind of bribes, or can you tell me how much the bribes you're given to surrounding people to accept your project?
All right, well, I disagree. I do not think it's a bribe.
Anytime you give money for support, it's a bribe.
Sure it is.
Well, but there is no, they do not have to support the project.
Yes, but if they want money,
No,
you're bribing.
if, and for our project, I can't speak to other projects. It sounds like you live near a different proposed
I've
project.
been bribed.
Well, so I don't know how those work. You can look, we can put a copy of ours on our website. Well, in fact, I think Vicky
I've
posted.
already posted.
Oh, now, see, the other solar companies, they absolutely threw a walleye hissy fit when I put it in the town, to the record.
No, ours are public. I mean, in fact, it says in the agreement that it's not confidential, people are free to share it.
I heard y'all left a couple zeros off that offer.
Well, I mean, if it was public, because now, I was offered $5,000. Now, we have a community solar project, which isn't as big as yours.
Yeah.
Okay? Right beside me, Mr. Staley, longtime teacher at Mount Gilead, he was only offered $1,500. So there seems to be varying amount.
Well, I can tell
So
you what
whatever
ours
you
is,
can
yeah.
get somebody suckered into is what I'm talking about. If you said, we'll put it on the website and say, hey, we're giving everybody $20,000,
No.
at least they would know.
Well, let me answer you.
Yeah.
So for our program, anybody who lives within a quarter of a mile of the boundary is eligible to participate in the Good Neighbor program. And it's about a 3-page agreement. Well, you can read it. Vicky posted it. But the compensation, which is designed to compensate people for construction, because the reality is construction is annoying. And I would see it that way too. And so those are the people that will actually be affected by the construction the most. So the compensation is a one-time $14,500 when the project gets built. There's no other requirement in the Good Neighbor Agreement except that if they have an issue with it, we ask that they contact us first and give us the opportunity to resolve the problem. They do not waive any rights to enforce the law or complain to OPSB or anyone else. We simply say, in the spirit of being neighbors, if you will please raise the issue with us and give us the opportunity to resolve it. And that's really what it is.
What's the industry standard price on that industry-wide?
I have no idea. I mean, I can tell you for my company, it depends on the size of the project. Generally, they range from about $10,000 to about $20,000, depending on the size of the project.
Gentleman in the white sweater.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Is there any anticipated like expansion? I know there's a lot of work to create a project like this. The lease was signed in what, 2019?
6 years ago.
Okay. Is there any goal for expansion in the area or anything like that? Or?
Not on the part of my company.
Okay.
And just so you know, and you will see, our schedule is to have a public information meeting in March, the second one in April, and I hope everybody comes. And then to submit a permit application shortly after that in either April or May. Once we've filed that permit application, any changes to that proposal have to go through OPSB. So there can be no changes snuck in on anybody. It would be an amendment to the application to be filed. If OPSB approves it and issues the permit, the only way any expansion could happen or a change would be for us to apply to amend that permit to make a change. So, and it goes through the same public process with public input and public hearings. So we don't have any plans to do anything, an expansion or something different. And if that changed, if we did, 3 years from now, if it's approved, well, then we would have to go through a very public process to propose a change.
Gentleman in the front.
When do your current leases expire?
Our leases have a 6-year period to get the project to start construction. And then that kicks off a 40-year operations period that we have to operate the project before decommissioning.
So what you're saying is this $14,500 in the Good Neighbor Agreement, if you divide that out by 40 years, you're going to find out what that comes out to. In 30 years, it comes out to less than $500 a year for you to turn your head and let them come in. That's what it agrees to. That's nothing more than a bribe. I'm sorry, but folks, if you look at it, it's going to cost you money when you lose the value to sell your home or the ability to sell it, $500 a year is a drop in the bucket.
Well, Mac, are you familiar with any other types of development that offer to provide compensation to neighbors simply for?
There was a project put in, and there's a project going in, this gentleman back here said in Roundhead, Ohio, which there's going to be a meeting on that pretty quick, but or not Roundhead, Indian Lake, I'm sorry. There's a project in between Roundhead and Alger, Ohio, that a farmer went to sell his farmland behind the solar farm that was there. Right now, farmland's bringing anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 an acre. He couldn't get $5,000 an acre for his farm, and they said it's because it's next to the solar farm. Well, then everybody starts saying, well, why is that? Well, first off, they're going to tell you solar panels are not harmful in any way. Well, they're not unless they're broke. Silicon tetrachloride is used in these solar panels. And I don't know where you're buying solar panels or you're getting them out of America or China or wherever. When they're built, silicon tetrachloride is used to build these. If that mixes with water and gets out into the ground, it damages the ground, it damages the groundwater, it gives off toxic fumes. So we're prone, we know that from what, 1981 for tornadoes? Mm-hmm. So when they come through and they tear the solar farm up and water mixes with these panels, if it gets out of these panels and gets onto the ground, your ground's not worth diddly squat. Your runoff is going to be contaminated. It's going to get into the ground. It's going to get into your groundwater. If you're still on a well, you may be having a problem pretty quick.
And I'll just say that is factually inaccurate, okay? And you don't take my word for it. Go look at the permit condition that will say that we can only use projects that have passed a test that confirms that the panels are not hazardous. They can be disposed of in a normal landfill, even though that's not generally and what we hope happens at the end of the project. There is no risk of soil contamination from solar panels. The trace amount of potentially toxic materials.
Are you buying these panels out of China?
Oh, yeah.
We don't know yet where the panels will
Okay,
come from.
well, if you're buying them out of
In your
China,
historical projects, what percentage of your panels come from China? In all of your projects, if you were to give a nice swag?
That's a good question. I could go.
You don't know off the top of your head?
No, I don't know, but we have done lots of projects. I can tell you, for example, the project in Brown County, which was one of the first large-scale projects permitted in Ohio. They use panels that are from a company called First Solar, and their panels are manufactured in Perrysburg, Ohio. I'm not saying all of them. I'd have to go back and do a survey and figure out which panels are being used. Different manufacturers have manufacturing facilities in different countries. Most of the panels today in the U.S. do not come from China. They come from other Asian countries. But as more and more manufacturing is being built here as a result of the two bills that Congress passed over the last 4 years, it's higher likelihood that panels in any project will come from U.S.-based manufacturing. But I could go look it up.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer.
It'd be good to understand the discernment between, made here versus assembled here.
On average,
But keep in mind,
average,
I think where you're going with this, and I too would be concerned about the quality of the panels. That's the reason for having a permit condition that says they have to be of a quality and pass tests that confirm that they are non-hazardous. So it doesn't matter whether they're from Korea or from Ohio or from Mexico.
Did Roundup
or from
pass that
China.
test years ago?
They have to pass that test.
so my question is, you post a surety bond to the OPSB board. You get these panels in here and we have a traumatic storm of some sort, tornado, whatever, wind, hail, whatever. So you're telling me that when there's water enters these panels, there's nothing in there that's going to affect them. There's nothing in there that's going to react to the water going into them, because the studies that I have pulled up says that silicon tetrachloride is built and used to build every panel. And when it mixes with water, it becomes toxic to the soil. It can become toxic to the people that are around it. and it becomes toxic when it drains off into fields. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying is, don't take my word for it, take the Ohio Department of Health. They looked at
I wouldn't
the
take
comprehensive
I
studies.
wouldn't
that have
trust
been
the
done.
Ohio Department of Health to check one of my children.
And to your point, I mean, there was a project in California in 2015 that a tornado hit and damaged thousands of panels, tore them up, they were on the ground, and the BLM and Virginia Tech went out and took soil samples. These are the thin film panels that have cadmium telluride. Free cadmium is absolutely toxic,
Yes.
but when bonded with telluride, it's non-soluble in water. They tested the soil after that tornado, and there was no evidence of soil contamination. So it's a totally fair concern, but I
Yes.
think it's important that people understand that the data do not show that there is any cause for concern to public health of soil contamination. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to take a poll in this room right now. We'll answer this question. If you had it, if the people in this room had a choice to buy property, this piece of property next to a 700-acre solar field, or a piece of property not next to the solar, who would buy the not next to the?
Well, you've noticed he hasn't named stuff. There's lots of them.
I would
Never
buy
named
property,
them. They're on the website.
my choice would be the property not next to that solar field, right?
Don't buy
So
it.
his,
Don't buy it.
so
There-
this million
Property value.
property value study is worth crap, because we got 90%. That's right.
If
Go
you
to
want to
another
walk over
county.
with me to our office, I would
90%
give
of
you
people in
one.
this room said they'd go someplace else to buy another piece of property. Well, what's that leave me?
Can I switch gears?
So you would like a specific
No.
one, the
You have some time.
Berkeley National Lab did a study and looked at 1.8 million transactions. 69% of them had zero impact. But take the study, don't take my word for it.
I
Yes,
would like to know,
I just took a study.
I would like to know if you do or have or planning to, as the zoning board said, we're a poor county. So the local fire departments may not be totally equipped to handle a field of your size. Are you working with those fire departments, helping them buy equipment, training, that type of thing?
we have proposed to the Morrow County Commissioners what's called a pilot agreement, and I hope they approve it, but one of the requirements of the pilot program is that we have to provide any necessary training and equipment to the local first responders. In this case, it's the Cardington Fire Department and the Tri-Valley. And so that's a requirement. And so, yes, if, for example, they needed another water tank in order to service the solar project in the event of a fire, well, then we have to provide that.
Are there any more questions? Yeah, I mean, it's getting kind of late.
Yeah.
Talk about damage and destruction potential with weather around here. I don't know how much you guys have.
Can't hear you.
I don't know how much you guys have noticed the weather around here and how much water comes down and how much flooding happens very quickly.
Right, it is.
If, I'm not even worried about that. If I'm downstream from y'all, so if the field gets damaged by storm and all that water comes running through my place, which it does already, and it carries all that debris onto my property, is that gonna be handled by the company or is that on me?
What debris are you talking about?
If the field is damaged by a tornado or panels floating or parts floating, literally the field's empty into my place.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fence around the whole thing, so.
Do you think that's gonna contain everything?
Well, there's two, let me answer your question too. So I can't imagine that scenario happening.
I've never seen floods around here.
Well, but let's say a tornado hit and then panels are on the ground and then there's a big flood. Well, the panels are gonna hit the fence.
Is the fence gonna survive all that too?
If the fence doesn't survive and if panels end up on your property, we have to carry liability insurance that will cover any damage. I mean, we carry casualty insurance that would replace any damaged equipment from an incident like that. But then if it were to do damage to a neighbor's property, then we have liability insurance that covers that.
There was another question, one more question.
Yeah.
You've asked a lot, thanks. Good person, Pink, please.
So how do we stop right us here in attention?
Okay. Well, let's talk about next steps, okay? The ball is in Open Roads Court. They have a choice. Either they can choose to pursue this, file with PJM, And then we start going through a very long process, which means it goes to the Ohio Power Siting Board, and they have both public meetings and then they have formal hearings. And before that happens, if there is objection to it, see, the Blossom one got snuck through. Mac's right. How I got involved in this was last April, when all of a sudden I found out that there was, in theory, one going up in Cardington. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't hear about that. And then I went over to dinner with the Griffins, and Bill says, Vicky, you do know there's one already, planned, already done up in Galion, Iberia area. I said, no. And sure enough, that was approved 2 years ago. And no one was ever told about it, except for a 5-by-7-inch advertisement in the Morrow County Sentinel,
Which no one reads.
And I said to Alberta, Alberta, I've learned my lesson. I'm now subscribing to the Morrow County Sentinel. So anyways, I mean, she got a subscription out of it, $50 a year. But no, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is significant. And I'm a chemical engineer. And I started looking, I thought there's no way that they can decommission that ground, that they can reclaim that ground back to the way it was originally. Plus, not only the panels, you've got the 6-inch diameter pilings. They're probably about 20 feet because they're pounded 10 feet into the ground that are galvanized. What is the chemical? What's the mineral? Zinc. Zinc is toxic to a lot of crops, and that's what they found in North Carolina. I think it's peanuts is it's toxic to. Aluminum is toxic to cotton. And I thought this is it. So I started found in a garage township hearings who he says and I've got his testimony here, there's no way you can return that ground to the way it was. So anyway, so what happens is everybody lawyers up. Lawyers will run probably between $20,000 and $75,000 to fight this thing in the Ohio Power Siting Board. And even if we were to win at the siting board, then Open Road is going to fight more money on lawyers, and theirs is Voorhees, one of the white shoe firms. And then if we still don't like it, or if they don't like it, then it's brought to the Supreme Court. Of the 75 cases that have been brought to the Ohio Power Siting Board, 8 of them have gone to the Supreme Appeal process for Grange Solar. Is that the Indian one that you were talking? Is Grange Indian?
We have nothing to do with O'Brien.
Right. There's one. Hold on. Harvey Solar. I'm sorry, Harvey Solar. Harvey Solar, and yeah. So they are not scared to take things. And what they do, it's like any attorney that instead of burying you with paperwork, they'll just draw. Where are we going to get a couple $100,000? Because each intervener group, whether it be county commissioners or township trustees or concerned citizens of Morrow County, each needs their own representation, which means we're looking at $250,000. So either they can choose to pursue it if they want to, or they can say, you know what? Westfield Township 2 years ago had the foresight to deny solar and wind projects in the township. They were on the ball with this. So despite the fact that obviously Westfield Township doesn't want this thing, they're still pursuing it.
And the problem.
Can I continue, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Don't you respect the people here enough to recognize that this is not a popular thing? It is going to change our way of life here. And we will, this will be my mission.
No benefit for us.
It's zero. Oh, it's a disaster. It is an absolute unmitigated disaster. You heard the constant whining a half a mile away? That's not just construction stuff. That's a 40-year sound that it's making.
I don't want my 4 kids listening to me. I'm in that quarter of a mile. I have 4 small children. I am the local varsity cross-country coach. I have some of these people's kids, grandkids at my house every Friday running. Health risks, noise, whatever. You're like, it's not just an eyesore, which eyesore is not really quite the word for this monstrosity, but it's eye pollution, visual pollution is a thing. It is absolutely a thing. We bought our house specifically a little over a year ago. I had no freaking idea this was coming.
I know.
We've been here since 18.
Well, no, I mean, I was born in Mount Gilead. I've been here my whole life, but I just mean our specific house.
We're in
we
the
live in
same
now.
range though.
And if you think just by living near the transmission lines that this is exclusive to those people, it is not. Because with these community solars, I'm Bruce McChesney farms the land across from me. Randy Graham does my 28 acres. Bruce could wake up one morning and say, you know what? I want to put in a community solar facility because I'm going to get a 60%, investment tax credit. And I could be looking out my window and there are 5 acres or 350 acres. Because what they do is they hook up to the local grid, not to the high power transmission grids. That's what divides the two of them. I guess my question is, we don't want this thing. Don't you have enough respect for us as human beings who are happy doing what we're doing right now? Couldn't you pull back and say, you know what?
I very much respect your opinion and I really appreciate what I can tell you that I respect is not just the opinions in this room, but also the preference of the landowners that own the land that would like to be a part of this project. There are also a lot of people in this community that support the project. And the reason why OPSB has such a long, rigorous process with public comments, with public hearings, with adjudicatory hearings, is precisely to get your opinion, to get the opinions of everybody in this room. And I hope you will do your homework and get all the facts. And if you think this is not a good thing for the community, then I hope you will come to the public hearing and submit comments and make your voice heard. And then it will be up to OPSB who has to decide, is this project in the public interest, and weigh all the different factors, including the demand for power, including the impacts on water resources and farmland, and decide, is this a good thing for Ohio and for Morrow County? But we'll also keep in mind that the farmers whose land it is, who decided to participate in it because they think it's the best thing for their land and their families, that their rights are also respected.
So are the ones that are in favor of it, the ones that are making a fortune off of it, the landowners, not necessarily the farmers that farm the land,
right,
but the people who own the land?
You don't live around here.
There's a difference.
What you will see through this process is there is all kinds of people who support this project. It will be the farmers, it will be the landowners, there will be
where are they
neighbors,
at?
There will be members of the community who would like to see $350,000 of new revenue to the public schools. There will be people who would like to see farmland protected from loss to real estate development. So you may not agree, but there will be people who see it that way. And it's OPSB's job to hear us all out and decide whether they think the permit should be granted.
So basically you told the Westfield Township, too bad, so sad. We're grandfathered in, so we're just gonna get on our horses
Do you live
and
in
keep
Westfield
going.
Township?
No, I do not.
I do.
That's
That's why I started this.
What's that?
I live in Westfield Township. That's why we're here.
Exactly.
But I
And
will
so-
tell you this. I will tell you this. These people that live in Morrow County have to abide by the laws produced by our township trustees and our forefathers, commissioners, whoever. And what upsets me the most is if I go to build a building, I gotta go to the township and I gotta ask for a permit. But you walk into a township meeting and say, hey, we're covered by OPSB. We don't care what you want. We're just gonna walk in and do it anyway. That really upsets me a bunch.
And I appreciate that, but that you need to take up with your state representative because that's.
Oh, that's already being done.
That's Ohio law.
That's already being done. I've already got calls from the state representative.
Yes, ma'am, in the back, in the camel coat.
I know this project includes most of my land that I own, and I'm going right now, I do not want it. It is going to my family, when I'm gone, and my grandkids. I don't want to have to look out the window and see these whole things. So I'm just telling you, I don't want it.
Okay, well, I would be happy to visit with you. I'm not sure what land you're referring to.
On 166.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to visit with you because I'd like to understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying is, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
And that is absolutely, I respect your opinion, but what you have to understand is that the landowners who are part of it would like solar panels, they have rights.
But I am telling you.
Okay, let's visit.
How many inverters?
Hold on.
Sorry,
Where's it at?
this gentleman has a question.
And then
You're talking about these tax breaks that are coming to the school and stuff. So,
Revenue?
okay, tax revenue. So does that mean that's gonna get passed on to me, because my taxes went from $1,500 to $3,200? Is that gonna get passed back to me, or is that just?
No, it absolutely can. That's a question for the commissioners and for the judge.
You ever see the taxes go down?
Okay, what? Yes, does someone else have a question?
Okay. Here is the answer.
I have one thing that I want to say, real quick.
The answer is set the tax rate. There will be $850,000 for a 94 megawatt project of new revenue, and it's up to the boards of the taxing jurisdictions, whether they take that money and reduce tax rates, or whether they use that to do something else. We have no say over that. That's up to them.
So they line their pockets more than still paying.
No, it doesn't go to their pockets. It goes to the public.
And
We've seen how it goes to them.
Alberta has a question.
Just a couple questions. One is, how many people have signed on as landowners to contract? I'm not asking names, but just the number of people.
7 families.
7 families?
7, yeah.
And then how many have signed on as good neighbors?
We just sent out the good neighbors. I'm not sure. Last I saw, I don't know that anybody has signed the good neighbor agreement yet. We just sent it out and it started talking to people about it. We'll know how many people sign up in a few months.
So at this time, you don't know of any that have signed on?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan corrected me. 3 people have signed so far.
3.
How many did you send out?
I think there are somewhere between 40 and 50 people who are eligible, who live within a quarter of a mile.
Okay, it's getting late. It's a school night. It's time to bed. It appears, before everybody leaves, it appears that indeed Open Road is intent on pursuing this thing, even though the Westfield Township trustees have voted against it, and even though it appears we are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what to do. We're gonna have another meeting to get organized. I've done organized opposition before. It's a lot of work and it's very expensive, but you don't have a choice. If you could do me a favor and sign up on the sign-up sheet over here with your name and either email or phone number. I'm gonna be contacting people because we're gonna have coordinators for all kinds of things, and it's gonna be a battle. Also, there are petitions in the back if you want to sign a petition. And thank you.
Have a good night, folks.
Hey, Mac. Excellent presentation. Don't trip.
I know.
Can it be seen? I want to let other people, but I used to live down in St. Louis in 2005 or 2006. I moved down to Lynchburg, Virginia. There's a government facility down there.